There's a substance right now sitting inside a nuclear warhead, or maybe a few dozen of them scattered across silos you'll never see on any map. And it's decaying right now. As you watch this, it's called tritium. And the crazy part? The thing that makes it so terrifying in a weapon is the exact same property that makes it completely useless if you don't constantly replace it. It disappears. Not in a dramatic explosion, not in a flash of light, it just, quietly, reliably, mathematically, turns into something else. And every nuclear superpower on Earth has built billion-dollar industrial operations, hidden inside civilian energy infrastructure. For the sole purpose of keeping this stuff from running out, this is how they do it. Before we get into the chemistry, understand something that almost nobody talks about. Tritium is, legally speaking, a civilian byproduct. On paper, the United States produces it inside a commercial nuclear reactor in South Carolina, the Watts Bar facility operated by the Tennessee Valley Authority, a power company, the kind that sends you an electricity bill. But those reactors have special fuel rods called TPBARs, tritium-producing burnable absorber rods. They get inserted into the reactor core alongside the regular fuel, and when neutrons hit them, they produce tritium. Then those rods get shipped, quietly, with armed escorts, to a processing facility in Amarillo, Texas, called the Pantex plant, which is also, by the way, where the US assembles and disassembles nuclear warheads, civilian electricity infrastructure. Military nuclear weapons program. Same building, same rods. Russia does this inside their RBMK reactors. The same reactor design as Chernobyl, which tells you something about how much they value the output over the risk. And China? China doesn't even bother with the civilian cover story. They run dedicated military production reactors in Jiuquan in the Gobi Desert, where satellite imagery shows cooling towers and nothing else for 40 miles. Everyone's doing it. Nobody fully admits to the scale. Here's the problem that keeps nuclear weapons engineers awake at night. Tritium has a half-life of 12.32 years. That sounds stable, right? It's not. That means every single year about 5.5% of the tritium in any given warhead just ceases to exist as tritium. It beta decays into helium-3, which is inert, and does absolutely nothing in a thermonuclear reaction. A warhead that was certified at full yield in 2010 is already a different weapon in 2026. Weaker, more unpredictable, potentially a dud in ways that nuclear planners don't like to publish casualty estimates for, so every warhead has to be regularly recharged. The helium-3 gets extracted, fresh tritium gets inserted, the clock resets, and the US stockpile, right now, requires roughly 2.5 kilograms of new tritium per year just to maintain the weapons that already exist, 2.5 kilograms. Sounds like nothing, a small bag of sugar, but the entire US annual production capacity is somewhere between 1.5 and 2 kilograms. Do the math. The United States government has openly acknowledged that it cannot currently produce enough tritium to maintain the full yield of its entire nuclear arsenal. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's in the Government Accountability Office reports from 2022 and 2023. They're trying to fix it. They haven't yet. So how do you actually make tritium from scratch? Start with lithium-6. Specifically, lithium-6, not the more common lithium-7. You have to enrich it the same way uranium gets enriched, separating isotopes that are chemically identical but physically slightly different. The US did this for decades at a plant in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, using a process that contaminated the surrounding area with mercury so thoroughly that sections of the site are still off limits. But that's just the raw material. You take lithium-6, you pack it into a ceramic pellet, you slide that pellet into a metal cladding tube made of zircaloy, the same material used in regular fuel rods. That tube is the TPBAR. It goes into a reactor. Inside the reactor core, temperatures are somewhere around 300 degrees Celsius, and neutrons are flying through the moderator water at roughly 2,200 meters per second. When one of those neutrons hits a lithium-6 nucleus, the nucleus splits into an alpha particle, helium-4, and a single triton, a hydrogen nucleus with 1 proton and 2 neutrons. That triton immediately captures an electron from its environment and becomes tritium gas, hydrogen-3. The gas builds up pressure inside the rod over the course of 18 to 24 months in the reactor cycle. When the rod gets pulled out and shipped to Amarillo, technicians puncture it under vacuum conditions, and the tritium gas gets collected, purified, compressed, and eventually loaded into warheads in quantities measured in grams. The entire trigger mechanism for a thermonuclear bomb, the thing that turns a fission explosion into a fusion explosion and multiplies the yield by a factor of 10, 100, 1,000, relies on a quantity of gas that you could hold in the palm of your hand. And if that gas is even slightly impure or slightly below the required pressure, the secondary stage doesn't ignite. The weapon still explodes. It just explodes like a very expensive conventional bomb. There's something that gets lost in all the physics and the geopolitics. The workers at Watts Bar who handle those tritium rods, they know what they're making, they sign NDAs, they go through security clearances most federal employees never touch. They work inside a building that is legally a power plant, doing work that is functionally a military program, and they get compensated accordingly. And the tritium they produce? It doesn't stay as tritium, that's the point. It decays, it leaks slightly. Tritium migrates through metal at room temperature, passing through steel barriers that would stop any other gas on Earth. It gets into the groundwater, around production facilities in concentrations that are, depending on which regulatory body you ask, either well within safe limits or a slow-motion contamination event that will take centuries to fully reverse. The Savannah River site in South Carolina, which processed tritium for decades before Watts Bar took over, has tritium plumes in the groundwater that are still moving, still spreading, slowly. And the helium-3 that comes out of every warhead recharge cycle? It's actually extraordinarily valuable, used in neutron detectors at airports and border crossings, in medical imaging, in quantum computing research. The entire global supply of helium-3 comes almost entirely from the decay of nuclear weapons stockpiles. Nuclear disarmament, if it ever actually happened at scale, would also destroy the helium-3 supply chain. The weapons industry and the scientific research community are, quietly, chemically dependent on each other. Everything's connected. Everything costs more than the price tag says.